Hello everyone, welcome back to another art time lapse. Today I am doing a piece inspired by Alice in Wonderland. This one's gonna be called Alice's Tea. This one I initially had a vague idea of how I wanted to have the aura of something very whimsical. I want it to be very airy, but still very crazy, full of color. And that is my plan. So starting off, I'm using acrylic wash, using a lot of water, watered down just to lay down how the background, the colors are gonna be. I want to do a yellow color, like a cooler color, as you can see for the yellow. It's not like a warm yellow. So I want that to glow through in the back for the painting. And here I'm just laying out where her arms are gonna be, and as you can see, as I progress throughout this painting, I actually changed my plan halfway through. Initially I wasn't sure if I want this to be like a Alice in Wonderland theme, but I've always had a interest and fascination with the story of Alice in Wonderland, just because I think it sparks so much curiosity and so much wonder. So if you've been following my channel for a while, you've been seeing a lot of pieces that are inspired by Alice in Wonderland. So for this color palette, I'm starting out with a lot of pastels. I'm using some pastel blues, some pinks, some lilacs, and then also some greens and such. Right now the colors look very bland, and that's because I'm just laying out the background with the colors, but later on I'm gonna layer on more colors and they're gonna be a little bit more concentrated, so you're gonna find that there's going to be less water added with subsequent layers. So just have to be very patient with myself. I find that in the beginning, especially when the piece doesn't look super stellar, super amazing, I get a little bit frustrated. I'm like, why doesn't this look nice? And I think that a lot of times when we see things on social media or on YouTube, we see the best of what comes out as an artist, that an artist can produce, but there's actually a lot of trial and error that doesn't always work out perfectly. So I just want to put it out there that not everything looks perfect and it doesn't always look great, and that is totally okay. Give yourself permission to let go and just enjoy the process. Even if the piece doesn't come out to be a museum worthy piece that you were hoping that will come out with, you have learned something. You have learned something from that painting process, and you can add it to your repertoire to build and make your portfolio even more beautiful and richer in the future. So if I was to give advice to my younger self, I would say calm down, enjoy the process, and don't give yourself so much pressure that every single piece has to be perfect. Sometimes there's beauty in imperfections as well. So here you can see I am using these really pop of orangey red colors. Still don't really have a really clear straight idea of how I want to do these abstract petals or luminous clouds that's coming out of her tea, but that's okay. I think as you've seen for some of my art time lapses, the execution sometimes changes in terms of the plan halfway through the piece, and it turns into something totally different than what I initially planned, and that is okay too. So here you can see I originally did really solid shapes, and then I started doing outlines just using my finest paintbrush. Usually for gouache I use watercolor brushes because I find that they retain water a little bit better, although you could use acrylic based brushes as well that I find are not as soft, so it's harder to kind of drag and pull these really long smooth lines. So that's one thing I would recommend if you are starting out with acrylic wash for the first time and you're picking up materials. I will probably go with watercolor brushes to begin with. And then here I'm just adding a little bit more design here and there. Still not really sure where I'm going. I don't think red is gonna be the major theme color for this piece, but I suspect that I'll probably add some more blues and some more pastel colors to kind of make everything kind of blend in. I must say at this point in the painting, I'm not super impressed with it. I'm not super happy with it, but I trust in the process and I'm just gonna keep going and do what feels right. You know how when you're younger, sometimes you would doodle with a pen on a scrap piece of paper, and sometimes it's like the most beautiful piece ever, and it's not like on any fancy paper, it's just on lined paper, and you're thinking like, how come I always do my best work on materials that are not like artist grade or like canvases? It's like just on scrap pieces of paper. And I think it has a lot to do with the mindset of like, you're just letting your creativity go free and not like stressing yourself. So with that in mind, I try to not get super stressed when I am drawing. Sometimes I would put some music on, I would have a coffee or a tea with me, just being careful not to mix up your teacup with your water container, because I've done that a number of times and it's not a good idea. But anyways, I try to set up a very comfortable environment for where I paint in a very relaxing vibe. And that's one thing I think that a lot of artists don't talk about. They show you how beautiful the artwork is, and like especially the process of like dragging your brush across and doing these outlines with these smooth painted lines. Like all of that comes with lots of experience, a lot of struggle, and like part of it is also like setting yourself up for success. You know how for athletes they would do stretches before they go for a run or a sprint, and for artists maybe it's a good idea to do a little bit of sketching and doodling to get you into the mood, or maybe like having a nice cup of tea or something that you like on the side and having some music. Working in a space with plenty of sunlight generally puts me more in a mood to paint, and like those are some ideas I would suggest thinking about rather than just like the material itself. Thinking about like how you can stretch that creativity and that time that you have dedicated towards it. So here you can see I'm actually working on the hand for Alice. Initially her hand was actually stroked like a different direction, a different way, and halfway through I thought, you know what, I think I would like her to hold on to a cup of tea and a saucer. That would look a bit better. So you can see with gouache, it's very opaque. So I just colored over my previous hand and I just repainted it with like these new hands. And then in the meantime, I'm adding these little patterns and dotted paint colors because I think that would be nice to get different textures and patterns. Overall, I think it's looking a little bit messy, but hopefully by the end of it, like all of the chaos will come together very nicely into one cohesive piece. My idea is for Atlas to be holding a cup and a saucer with like this luminous cloud of fragrance and aroma that's coming out of her teacup. Not really sure if it's tea in her teacup or something else, but like I just love the idea of like the aroma of it. Could be something, if you were to draw it, how would aroma look like? Have you ever had like a hot cup of tea or like a hot cup of coffee where you have it in your hand and you smell it and it smells amazing, but like if you were to draw that smell, how would it look like? And that was my challenge for this piece, just like putting your senses and describing it in different means, in a visual means. Now you can see I'm using some darker color blues and violets to outline the piece. I think it's looking quite a bit nicer, standing out a little bit more as opposed to before. I honestly really enjoy doing this piece. It did take me at least 2 weeks to kind of wrap this up, but like I think the results was better than I expected, and it actually jives with the pattern and the style that I have for my artwork. I think I did something very similar in the past, but like in a different color scheme, and I was honestly a little bit surprised because I've always had a hard time figuring out what my style is, and I think over time with doing so many different pieces, I think I'm finally seeing a pattern. And it's always so exciting because like having a style for an artist, it's like having a signature or autograph that's so unique on your own. So at this point, if you're looking at the piece, I can see that it looks very messy. I think I may have added too much like the darker outline onto it. I'm not super in love. It's just like overall very messy. But like when I was doing it at the time, it felt good. And here's how it looks like as a quick pan across. You can see Alice, this is tea, her having her teacup in her hand and the aroma just kind of looming out of it. Very like crazy, very chaotic, but that's okay. That's how life is sometimes. Well, thank you so much for joining me on this art time lapse, and hopefully I will see you next time in another video. Take care and stay creative, everyone. Bye for now.